Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February 6th meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023, signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress might do so by calling 508-4410, conference ID 698-918-859. Again, that's 508-945-4410, and enter conference ID 698-918-859, #, or one may join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. All right, welcome everybody. We are going to continue our FY25 budget review today with examination of the Department of Public Works budget. Rob Faley is here along with Carrie again. And in order to start, let's do a quick roll call. Tommy Doan.
Here.
Thank you. Barb Madison.
Here.
Don Papalardo. Here. Joanne Sprague.
Here.
Andy Young.
Here.
Kristen Andres.
Here.
Tracy Shields.
Here.
The chair is present. All right. So why don't we just dive right in? Rob, Carrie?
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're going to present the Public Works budget and the water operating budget as well. So the Public Works and Facilities operating budget is presented at $7.339 million for FY25, an increase of $313,517 over the current fiscal year budget. The Highway Division budget presented includes a departmental budget of $875,000 from 2024. The Project Admin and Facilities Division includes an operating budget of $1.5 million. The Transfer Station Division budget presented includes a departmental budget of $1.8 million. The Snow and Ice Division is level funded for 2025 at $95,000. The Street Lighting Division includes a budget of $22,500 and is level funded for 2025. The Fuel Depot Division includes a budget of $235,000, and that is also level funded for 2025. The Sewer Division budget presented includes a departmental budget of $1.7 million. The Cemetery Division budget presented includes a departmental budget of $129,000. The Parks and Grounds Division budget presented includes a departmental budget of $564,000. The 2025 capital plan for the DBW includes $175,000 to replace a 2006 tractor mower, $10,000 for water main replacement. There is also a request for replacing a transfer station roll-off truck in the amount of $361,700, and that will be a separate article. The Highway Division requests are $20,000 for annual road maintenance, $10,000 for bike trail maintenance, $30,000 for catch basins, $10,000 for emergency road repairs, $200,000 for road resurfacing, $100,000 for sidewalk construction. The project administration requests are $200,000 for property management and building maintenance projects. The municipal building requests are $200,000 for ADA improvements and $30,000 for public restroom improvements. The Parks and Ground requests are $55,000 for a new stump grinder. And the Cemetery Department requests are $10,000 for cleaning of headstones and $15,000 for fence repair and vegetation removal. There is also a separate article for the Sewer Department for $1.7 million for $1 million for lining of 8-inch AC force main pipe, $170,000 for original sewer collection system repairs, $265,000 for rehab of septic building Lakeside, and $300,000 for, God, I mess this one up. It's WPCF, and I can't remember what that stands for. There you go, Water Pollution Control Facility, electronic systems upgrade.
So can we just take a quick time out?
Yes.
We just got fire hosed with a lot of figures.
Yes.
What I think I'd like to do is see if we couldn't just take a couple steps back and provide some context, and Rob, maybe this is better on you. Provide some context of the various operating divisions. Typically, DPW is the second biggest budget within the municipal infrastructure, typically following public safety. So if we could just get some context of who the various divisions are, what you guys do, just to remind the viewers and committee members as well, perhaps. I think that'd be helpful, and then we can dive into the numbers.
No problem.
Perfect. So Rob, over to you if we could, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Rob Faley. I'm the Public Works Director for the town of Chatham. If you allow me to just dive into my slides, I have kind of an explanation of all the divisions of DPW.
Let her rip.
Okay. So the Department of Public Works has 7 divisions: municipal highway buildings, which is also known as facilities, highways, transfer station, cemeteries, parks and grounds, water, and sewer. DPW staff, there's equivalent of 43 full-time employees, although some of those are contracted. The water and sewer division are contracted through Weston and Sampson. So in administration, we have 5 full-time employees, 3 administrators, deputy director, and the director. Highways are 7 full-time employees. Transfer station, 8 full-time employees. Facilities, 3 full-time employees. Parks and grounds, 7 full-time employees. Cemetery, 1 full-time employee. And again, water and sewer are contracted, but equivalent of 11 and a half employees. We added 3.5 staff this year. We do carry 3 vacancies as well. So we're right around 40 currently. As far as DPW vehicles and equipment, administration, again, the director and the deputy director have take-home vehicles. We seldom take them home. It's just depends on convenience and responding to things going on around town. Highway division has a pretty long list of equipment. I don't know if you want me to go through each of these. What does the chair prefer?
Why don't we just let's take a quick 30-second spin through.
Okay.
I think the more the townspeople and the taxpayers and voters understand what's behind
Absolutely.
the curtain, the better off.
So highways, we have 2 skid steer, 7 dump trucks. Good this year. We've ordered 2 roll-off dump trucks. I think it was about 2 years ago. We finally got those delivered about a month or 2 ago. So those are dump trucks that have basically roll-off container bodies, and they can articulate, so they can remove the bodies of the truck themselves, and then they can pull on a sander body. We could go upgrade in the future to get like a flatbed body or whatever. It's a very versatile piece of equipment. So we just got delivery of those 2 dump trucks about 2 months ago. We have 4 one-ton pickup trucks, 1 backhoe, a forklift, 1 mowing tractor, which we'll be discussing later, 1 loader, 1 mini excavator, a street sweeper, and a catch basin cleaner. Transfer station has 2 roll-off trucks, 1 trash truck, 1 loader, 1 ATV gator, 1 pickup truck, and this must be an older version of this presentation because it also has 2 Ottawa trucks. They're basically yard trucks at the transfer station that just move around containers. They're not roadworthy. Municipal facilities has 2 pickup trucks and 1 van. All 3 of those are take-home vehicles, and that's so that staff can respond to alarms that happen at night, and they're on call 24/7. Parks and Grounds has 5 one-ton pickups and 2 regular pickups. Sewer and water, all of those vehicles are part of the operational contract we have with Weston and Sampson, with the exception of the Vector truck. That's why it's that lighter gray shade of gray. The Vector truck is a town-owned piece of equipment. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you just tell me the difference between roll-off trucks and trash trucks and what they do?
So a trash truck is the smaller compactor truck that drives around town emptying trash cans.
Okay.
There's about 135 trash cans around town, and that is a single person operating it. It has, they dump the trash in the back, and it has a little compactor in the back.
Okay, I have seen those.
The
Okay.
roll-off trucks are big, like a 30 or 40-yard dumpster on the back of it. So they go around and they deliver recyclable materials to places off Cape,
Okay,
typically off Cape. Some of them are on Cape, but that's where all of our glass and plastics and cardboard and all that stuff. That's where those trucks haul that material.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Rob, just to be clear, the lighter gray trucks indicated under water and sewer are provided for by Weston and Sampson under their contract?
That's correct.
Agreement?
Yep.
Very good, thank you.
So as Carrie mentioned before, operating budget for the DPW is a little over 7.33 million. If we look at the percentage breakdown by department, at 12 o'clock, going clockwise, the first area, 23% is municipal buildings, 12% of the budget is highways, 1% snow and ice. It says 0% street lighting, but that's about 23,000. It doesn't register. It's such a small percentage. 3% for the central fuel depot. Transfer station is 25% of the budget. Sewer department encompasses 23%. Cemetery department is 2%. Parks and grounds, 8%. And projects administration, 3%. I'll get into the numbers a little bit more detail in a minute. So this budget represents an increase of $313,518, or 4.46%. Something different this year that we're doing, project administration, category 190 in the charge accounts. It's being separated from municipal buildings this year. Terry Whalen's here. He'll talk a little bit more about that, but that we're basically separating what Terry's part of the budget does for project administration, and separating that from the operation of facilities. So basically, the breakdown or the personnel increases for this year is $115,348. Operational increases are $198,170.
And are those personnel increases predominantly just contracted step increases and the like?
It's all CBA agreement and longevity bonuses.
Okay, thank you.
So here with just a breakdown of that as well, shows each department how labor rates have been increased. You'll notice cemetery and parks and grounds are lower, and that's because we had some longer tenured employees that had left, and we hired new employees at lower salaries. So we were able to achieve a savings there.
Joanne, please.
What does CBA mean, please?
Collective bargaining agreement.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's, the union contract. So the operational increases, I have a picture of a uniform here because you're going to see that's kind of a common theme. Uniform costs are going up across the board. So we were able to level fund a large portion of the operational aspects of DPW, with the exception of sewer and uniform costs. So you'll see municipal buildings, we increased that $1,000 just to cover the uniform costs. All the other categories were level funded. Highways, same thing, uniform cost increased $2,300 to $11,000, and all the other categories were level funded. And some of the increase in uniform cost, I'll put this disclaimer there, is because we have additional staff too, so there is a higher expense providing uniforms. So the sewer piece of this, contracted services, we are projecting an increase of $136,000. The 5-year contract we have with Weston and Sampson expires June 30th, 2024. We have to go out, we're in the middle of writing an RFP. We have to go back out to bid, likely for another 5-year contract. Preliminary discussions with some of the companies that are interested in bidding are saying personnel costs are rising substantially. So we carried this in there We don't really know what it will be until we have a signed contract, but that's our projection. We'll see a similar increase in water as well. We're able to reduce electricity $10,000 to $82,800.
Tracy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to clarify, so is it the range of 136 to 850 is what you're, somewhere in there is where you think it'll lie?
No, so the line item has increased $136,000
Oh.
to what we think the final resting place will be is $850,000. So, yeah, sorry if it wasn't clear in there. When I was writing it, I was like, is this going to make sense to me? But I'm not sure if it made sense to everybody else.
John, please.
Thank you. How did you reduce the electricity cost?
We're just seeing some efficiencies with some of the newer motors and things like that. I think some of the costs we're showing is a more accurate reflection of what the electricity is actually costing us. So we just tried to match like a last few years average.
The solar installations we have in town,
Johnny, turn your mic on.
the solar installations we have in town, do they fall under your department? Or how does that work? Where do they show up?
Jump ball.
Are you talking about the revenues that we're receiving from the solar?
And maintenance, yeah, the whole, I mean, are they
So-
the property of the town?
Currently, the revenues that we receive for the solar is going to the general fund. As far as the operational costs, I'm not sure about that because I believe we have a lease, but Terry might be able to speak on that more.
Thank you.
Terry, please.
Yeah, Terry Whalen, Principal Projects Operations Administrator. Yeah, so, and again, I think it carried the bulk of the revenue or benefits do go into the general fund, but in the instance of the wastewater pollution control facility or installations where we have rooftop installations, generally they shave the costs of the of electric that's being used at the facilities, and then also the participation in the Cape Light Compact through the municipal aggregation. We basically, if you had a chance, I didn't bring the exact text, but from the in the town manager's narrative for the budget presentation, basically, you know, through collective regional buying power, we've basically secured a rate that's close to, actually, it's a little bit more than half of the Eversource rate. So those kind of participation in those events help for that. But again, as far as the revenue, it goes into the general fund. But again, I don't think it gets applied directly to the, within the budget,
Thank you.
if that helps.
I have a lot of solar questions, but.
Okay,
this
yep, well, we
probably
can,
isn't
we
the
can,
time for it.
when, if I can do so.
Thank you.
Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This rolls along pretty quickly, and we don't want to forget that we're here to help translate a lot of this for the taxpayers. So when you say contracted services increased by $136,000, what do you attribute that to, so our taxpayers can understand why they're paying an increased cost?
Sure, I'm happy to discuss that. So as we are continuing to expand our sewer service, we're putting more pump stations online. That requires an additional person, additional staff member to handle all the additional, you know, manhole inspections and pump station maintenance that we need to work on. Also, hourly rates have increased substantially over the last few years. So we've heard some kind of gripes from our existing contractor that they didn't project far enough in advance, you know, what the salary increases would be over time. And they're feeling some pain points right now. So we expect people are going to project out and cover their bases when we go out with the new contract.
So depending on contracts, you're saying inflation plays a part in this as well?
Inflation does, increased workload, and higher salaries.
Okay, that gets it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Rob, in this context, is contracted services predominantly or exclusively Warren, West End, Sampson?
Currently, it is. I mean, we'll go out to bid. We've heard from 4 different vendors that are interested, which is good. Always good to have competition.
Is there a risk of transferring kind of the IP where you just go with a different vendor on a going forward basis? Is that something that gets evaluated in the process?
Typically, they'll keep the same staff. online.
Interesting, okay.
Because they don't want to have that learning curve to try to bring other people up to speed, so.
I would think not.
But, dollar values may not be the only criteria to look at when we analyze these contracts.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, good. Back to you, please.
Okay. Excuse me. Transfer station, this requires a little bit further in-depth explanation. Again, you'll see uniforms have increased $2,000 to the ultimate line item of $10,000. CMAS tipping increased by $23,500 to $585,000. So CMAS, we have a 5-year contract with CMAS. It increases 3% every year. That contract is set to expire December 31st, 2024. So we'll have to go back out with CMAS. They'll be generating a new contract. We don't know what those increases will look like. Will it just be another 3% or will it be something different? I know there's a challenge getting rid of solid waste all over the planet, really. So we'll probably see some increases there. It's really hard to predict what we would see as an actual increase. CMAS trucking increased by $35,200. That's a contracted service. They basically take our our tractor trailers. We have 4 of them, and they bring those to CMAS. It's $550 every single time one of those trucks is taken off. Increased fuel prices, maintenance to vehicles, and labor rates are all contributing to that increase. Recyclable material removal has decreased $23,000 to $320,000. And really the only way I can say, thank you, we were able to achieve these savings is Dave Lusher, the foreman at the transfer station. He's always looking out for renewed contracts, who's going to give us the better deal. So it's a moving target, and I really attribute his efforts to be able to reduce that, because across the board we're seeing recycling, to dispose of recycling, it's increasing. Printing is just a very minor decrease. Operational supplies decreased by $7,000. Again, it's just really keeping an eye on things operationally at the transfer station, and I credit Dave for really bringing that cost down. And all the other categories are level funded.
Please give Dave our congratulations and respect. Please give Dave our congratulations and respect. Joanne, please.
Yes, the recyclable material remover decreased by $23,000. Is that a product of fewer recyclables or less cost? Because I use the dump and I go in there and we try so hard to recycle everything, and I will be there throwing my bag in there, and there'll be a commercial truck come in and just dump a whole load full of everything. I mean, there's cardboard, there's newspapers. That's hard to see when you're working so hard to recycle, to see that amount of garbage go in there that contains recyclables and everything else. How do you police that, or what control it?
So there are different rates for different materials. So, where we have residents separate glass and cardboard and plastics and aluminum and those things, that's single stream recycling. It's a much lower rate for us to dispose of that material. What the contractors bring in, the trash haulers, is single stream, sorry. So that's a mixed of, everything is mixed up. And we pay a higher rate to get rid of that. We charge them for it, but that's a higher rate. And we don't want to really allow residents to do that, because we'd be paying that higher rate for everything. So it's something that we pass on to the trash haulers, and they pay that higher rate. We reflect that back in their rates.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was along the same lines, because I too try to do a lot of recycling item by item, or rather, type of trash by type of trash. What kind of savings do we get for the individual component recycling vis-à-vis the single-source recycling that the trash haulers do?
You know, I don't have those numbers. A lot of it depends on marketing, you know, what the market bears. So, like glass, for instance, there's really not a market for it. We bring that to Dennis. A company comes in and crushes that glass, and then they haul it off and reuse it. You know, cardboard has a rate that fluctuates monthly. So we may actually make money on some of it.
Yeah, we did a while back.
Yeah.
And do we, those big trucks that you were describing before, I'm forgetting the names of them now, do we haul a lot of our own recycling stuff that we take to Dennis and other places and save money that way as well?
We do. We haul all the recycling materials, whether it's mattresses, plastics, glass, aluminum. The only thing that we hired out is the trash that goes to CMAS. And that's over in, I think, Rochester, Massachusetts. And that's a much longer haul. Basically, because we don't have a tractor trailer unit, and the number of trips that they take, we would have to have a couple of more employees, a tractor trailer unit or two. It's just a constant. Sometimes in the summer, they're there 2 or 3 times a day to take loads over to CMAS.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Rob, in that context, did you mention that the contract with CMAS is coming up?
It's due the end of this calendar year.
And is there any competition to them?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, didn't think so. Okay, thank you.
Parks and grounds, again, uniforms, vehicle equipment and maintenance increased $2,750. That's $2,750. That's primarily due to mower parts. Things are just the supply chain costs have gone up in all those areas, whether it's blades or belts or that kind of stuff for our mowing equipment. Building grounds and maintenance increased by $13,500. That's primarily due to there was a voluntary ban on glyphosate, which is like the chemical primarily used in Roundup. It's created a real challenge for us to keep weed control down, keep weeds from growing on athletic fields and around our office buildings. We've tried a number of different organic type products. None of them are, really as equivalent as to the more harmful chemicals. So yeah, it's just additional maintenance that we need to do to cover, a more environmentally friendly way to do that kind of business, that practice. So any questions on that part? Because I have a feeling there would be some, but I guess if not, that's okay.
Nope, you're skating through.
Cemeteries, we've increased that buildings and grounds maintenance budget $20,000. Last year, and that's really primary for mowing. Last year, was the first year that DPW had a full year of mowing at the cemeteries. I don't know if you remember, it really didn't have that dry period. It rained a good portion of the summer. The grass never stopped growing. We couldn't keep up with it, so we contracted out Union and Seaside cemeteries, and that's just that $20,000 is that additional amount just to cover those costs.
Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the reasons you don't hear much from us about articles like building, grounds, and maintenance increase is that we're talking about things that everyone in this town can appreciate and enjoy, whereas not every article in the budget is like that. But the better our cemeteries and our parks and public grounds look, for most of us, I think it's a treat, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. So as Carrie mentioned before, snow and ice, street lighting, and the central fuel depot, there are no proposed changes. And again, that project administration, the $221,400, that will be part of Terry Whalen's proposal.
Rob, there's a pretty significant jump in the expense for street lighting in FY24, carrying in through to FY25 proposed. Do we have any insight? I know it was outside of your tenure, but do we have any sense or anybody as to why we saw that number jump to the degree it did?
I don't know. I'll look at Carrie or Jill's coming up.
Yeah, no, it's outside of your term.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we were at the end of our aggregate contract that Terry had mentioned, and we weren't sure where the rates were going to go. So certainly, Carrie will be tracking where we are year-to-date on spending and felt pretty comfortable. There aren't many new streetlights that have been proposed or installed, so it's basically electricity, the rate for that.
And everything's pretty much LED these days, right, after
It is,
that
yeah.
effort?
I
Yes.
wonder, would the West Chatham lights at the roundabouts have anything to do? You know, the increased number of streetlights?
It could have, but offhand, I'm not really
Okay.
sure, but there
There's
was some
sort of
factor.
a circa 30% increase in the cost.
Yes.
Would seem to be more than just the West Chatham, but, okay, thank you.
We'll jump into the water department budget quickly. So in the orange column, it's the FY '24 that was voted, and the green column is FY '25 requested. We look at salary increases are pretty minor. They went from $244,014 to $273,732. Water fund expenses, actually, they're projected to go down. And even though I mentioned that there were expected increases with the operational contract currently held by Weston and Sampson, we found some other efficiencies where we found some cost savings, things we were able to move around and kind of make up for that difference. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. It's basically that area is just about level funded. Overhead increases, you know, that's just retirement and health insurance and things of that nature. And the big jump, the majority of this category is the jump in debt service. I'll get into that on the next slide for a moment, but it's basically a little over $500,000 or roughly $500,000 or a 12.41% increase. And the next slide really just talks about the debt service. 2024 was $1,037,000. 2025 projected to be $1.59 million. Likely that will continue as we have wells 10 and 11 about to go online in the next month or two. The construction beginning on wells 5 and 8. Those are all big ticket items that have a lot of debt associated with them. So I think what you'll see, and probably Carrie can explain it better than I can, but 2025 will continue to climb instead of a reduction in 2026. I think you'll see it projecting upwards.
And Rob, as you work through these capital projects, especially on things like wells, is there an anticipated useful life that you factor into the decision-making?
You see, most of the wells have over 50-year useful life. I mean, there are components that will need to be refurbished and replaced over time, but you know, we try to look at least 50 years out.
Okay. Right, that's helpful. Thank you. Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rob, we received an email from Elaine Gibbs in which she indicated that the new wells, 10 and 11, do not have PFAS filtration systems.
That's correct.
Is there a reason that we didn't put those on?
PFAS has never been detected in wells 10 or 11. It's a very expensive filtration system to install, and if it's not needed, it's maybe kind of a waste of money.
Well, it kind of hadn't been detected in some of the other wells that it recently has been detected in, so how do they get in there? I mean, do we have a reasonable expectation that they will not get into those two wells?
Yeah, I mean, they could very well, those chemicals could go into those wells, but, you know, they could be 50 years from now, we could be having the same conversation and they may not have appeared at all. When you determine the type of filtration system you need, you also need to know what type of PFAS chemical you're trying to mitigate. So without any detected PFAS, it's really hard to know whether it's a resin-based system or an activated carbon system, or how are you going to treat something if it's an unknown quantity? You know, it's kind of hard, kind of almost like the chicken before the egg kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's way over my head, but it's frightening to me as a taxpayer and to a lot of our other taxpayers to think that we could spend this kind of money and then be looking at, millions more that we're going to have to spend in the future if the same thing happens to these wells as to other wells that we have.
Yeah, and it's definitely conversations that we're having, but again, there hasn't been detected in any other wells other than 5 and 8 at this point.
Okay, thanks.
And we as a committee will have a further discussion about that memorandum, a couple minutes this afternoon, and then perhaps a little more next week as to which disposition and direction. So more to come on that. Joanne, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any research going on in the department about a location of future wells if they're needed? In other words, is there the possibility of us having new or more wells in case we run into a need for them?
So we're in the middle of a hydraulic analysis for the town. It looks at the possibility of additional wells. It looks at should we increase our pumping capacity? Should we increase storage with additional tanks? Should we increase the size of some of our mains to make them more efficient? Weston and Sampson has undertaken the study. They will be presenting at the next Water and Sewer Advisory Committee's meeting, which I think is February 12th, if I'm not mistaken. And then once that, if the committee agrees and votes to send it to the select board for their consideration, that'll be, at a subsequent select board meeting.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Andy, please.
Rob, I'm curious about the PFAS remediation effort that we've already funded for wells 5 and 8. I mean, how far away from that being completed?
So construction hasn't started yet.
Oh, it hasn't.
The design is completed.
Okay.
Because it's over $10 million, we had to go through a pre-qualification process with all of the prospective bidders. Mm-hmm. We just finalized that today, actually. It was 53 bidders that came out that were interested in the project, and it covers like general contractors, masons, painters, every of the Chapter 190, 149 subcategories. It's good to see that there were that many interested. We only had 2 for fire suppression, so we went back out to see if we can get any more interest. We want to have at least 3 in every category. Once we close that phase, we will go out to advertise and anticipate construction starting sometime this spring. It's about
Great,
a 2-year
thank you.
project.
Thank you.
John, please.
And Andy had my question.
Good.
Oh, look at that.
I'm sorry, Tracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I may have confused what you were saying in the last slide. Even though after 2025, it looks like the debt service is decreasing, you had said that it would be increasing after 25.
And I'll let Carrie clear this up.
I can talk on that. So as of right now, that shows what our current debt is, but we haven't gone out to borrow for some of the projects that DPW has been expending. So in the next couple months, we're going to be going out to borrow, so that you're going to see that raise in 25 and be higher also throughout the years, because the more projects we take on, the more debt we take on. We don't take on. So if you vote for an $11 million project, we don't just go out and borrow for 11 million. We borrow for how much we're using, because potentially maybe we won't use all of the 11 million. So does that make sense? Okay.
Andy, please.
Although I think it'd be useful to have not just what exists, but also the projection based on what we've already authorized.
Right. I understand what you're saying, but this is what we currently have on the books for debt. Yeah.
But if it's $1.5 million for 2025, do we know that there's another X million out there that we might have to deal with?
Right. I don't know what that figure is as of yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joanne?
spending, we should have a record of what's been authorized and what's been spent. I think that's very helpful to remind us of what we've already authorized,
Yep, we do have that.
okay?
Yep. I can supply that for you if you need it.
I think that's a good idea.
If we could circulate that to the committee, that would be helpful, I think.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. All right, Rob, back to you, please.
Sure. So that concludes the operational portion of the presentation. We're going to dive into capital budget requests. So the first is an annual request for $10,000 for cleaning of headstones. It keeps the headstones in the cemeteries looking cared for. It's part of the perpetual care that plot owners expect for their investment. You can kind of see in the background, there's a taller monument that's a kind of an example of one that's been cleaned not too long ago. And in the foreground are some of the other ones that are covered in, lichen and moss and that kind of stuff. So we had CPC funds for, I think it was around $37,000. We just let out a contract for Jean Fougere to clean, I think, 107 headstones and straighten them and repair the broken ones at Seaside. And, it's amazing. It's just such a small footprint, but I think it's going to make a really big difference when people first enter the cemetery, Seaside Cemetery, and see what impact that could have. So we just want to keep propelling that into the future.
Tracy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be a really naive question, but why does that come as a capital expense if it's annually? Why doesn't that be incorporated into the regular budget of cemeteries?
That's a great question.
Carrie, you want to jump that one?
So I believe the $10,000 is actually paid from other funds for cleaning of the headstones. It's paid from either sale of lots or perpetual care, one of the two, and it requires an authorization at town meeting to vote it out of that that type of fund to pay for this. But I do agree with you. There are like certain annual requests that do get, asked for from certain departments year after year. Maybe we look at something different, I don't know. But as far as this one, it does need town meeting approval to pay for it.
So maybe this is one for the town manager, but I think there's been an effort over the last 2 or 3 years to kind of redirect in some instances where certain expenses are allocated to, whether they're capital or operating. Is this one that would be a candidate for something like that, do we think, Jill?
So this one is included in the capital budget. The capital budget is anywhere between $5,000 and $250,000. And as you may have noticed before, for the funding for the capital, there's sometimes 4 different funding sources in addition to free cash. That's the other available funds. And that's why we've had it separated in the capital program versus in the operating budget. But there's some ongoing annual operating costs that have been funded in the capital plan that Carrie is on her to-do list is going to look at putting them back into the operating budget under capital outlay. So just some fine tuning, but this one in particular, as Carrie said, it's a different funding source than the tax rate. And for that, we put it in the capital plan.
Okay. All right, that's clear. Thank you. Rob?
Next capital request, again, another annual request for $10,000. Replacement of old, unlined, and undersized water main and service lines. This will cover some of the smaller water services that were installed. We just contracted with a consultant to identify all the services around town that may be lead, steel, or copper, which are leaching, chemicals into the drinking water supply. So, I think this is going to be one of those areas where it may be increased in the future once we can identify all of those locations and come up with a solid game plan. EPA had requested that every municipality in Massachusetts undertake this study and have the study completed with the game plan moving forward by October 2024. So So we're well underway, and I think we'll have a recommendation here in the next few months.
Andy, please.
Rob, do I understand correctly, these are for the service lines that run from the main into the private property?
Right, it won't include the private property portion, but it will include from the main to, say, the curb stop.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Rob, do we have any, not to get ahead of ourselves, but do we have any sense that there's a material amount of lead on a percentage basis?
It's really unknown. You know, a lot of the services that were put in so long ago, and there really aren't any records of what material that was used. So
That's a fair answer. Tracy, please.
I wonder if when those studies are complete and you identify the areas that need to be changed out, if it would also behoove us to inform the property owner that their side may also have, you know, the potential for this sort of leaching, and they might want to change theirs out as well.
sure, I foresee the study being a public document that you know, homeowners will be able to look up online. Maybe it's a GIS layer or something along those lines.
Okay. John looks like he's going for it.
Once the study's complete, I would hope there's a prioritization process so that we focus whatever limited resources we're gonna put at it year over year to the highest, the areas where there's the highest percentage of year-round residency. People that are using the water every day.
Yes, and that's part of the EPA needs us to, part of their task is for us to identify kind of a hierarchy and a replacement plan. Whether that's, they didn't really set a timeline, whether it has to be over the next, 5, 10, or 20 years. They didn't really identify that, but we'll certainly have something. I'll be here next year sharing more information and probably asking for additional funding to support that.
Are there, I thought I remembered there was some monies appropriated, federal monies appropriated to deal with upgrading water infrastructure in the most recent mega appropriation out of Congress. Is that right? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I've heard some inklings towards that, but I haven't seen, any of the kind of the breakdown for, what it can be used for.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Rob, tangential to all this, and thinking about the EPA, if I'm not mistaken, they announced that they were opening a comment period on reducing the detection thresholds for PFAS some number of months ago. Do we have any update on kind of where we stand? The detection levels they were talking about were pretty dramatic and potentially expensive. Is there any update on that?
No, so they're in the 3-year process before they roll it out. So they're going from Massachusetts derived 20 parts per trillion to an EPA dictated 4 parts per trillion. So that reduces it quite a bit. Again, all of our wells, except for 5 and 8, which are going under a treatment plant, all of our wells have been non-detect. So they're not even showing up on the chart. So you can't even say that they're close to 4. They're not even showing up on the charts at all. So I believe EPA has 3 years. They're in the public comment period. I think they're maybe a few months into it.
Okay.
A 3-year public comment period, and then I guess if it passes, it becomes law after that. But I don't think we'll have anything to worry about since we're non-detect.
Good.
Unless something happens down the road.
Sure.
It's something we can't predict.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. All right, bike trail maintenance.
So bike trail maintenance, another annual request. This is just one example of something we were able to do this past fall. It was a privacy fence that had shown years of rot. We had repaired it multiple times. It had a lot of wind damage. It was around $16,000, but we used this fund for the last 2 years to help support that. And the bike path in that section was repaved as part of the sewer project. So we were able to get, in effect, a brand-new section of bike path out of it. So, I work closely with the Bikeways Committee, and every year we identify projects that we can put some of this money towards.
Joanne, please.
How do you determine, or how do we determine whether this kind of money should come from CPA funds or our budget for the bike trail maintenance?
I believe the Bikeways Committee does go to CPC for matching funds for grants, like we've got the Mass Trails grant that is
Yeah.
funding the George Ryder Road bike path, and the matching town funds are coming from CPC. I think that may be a special, like more of like a one-off kind of instance, not a regular maintenance thing, but I'm kind of
So,
guessing here.
so if we felt that the increase, the overall budget increase was too much this year, then we could recommend that the money be asked for through the CPA. Is that correct? Is that an alternative?
Mr. Chair, so the CPA funds cannot be used for maintenance. They could be used for establishing like new trails, or I think it's adding something to a trail, like if there wasn't a fence to add that, but anything termed maintenance doesn't qualify for the Community Preservation Act funds.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Tracy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The George Ryder portion, which I believe is set to begin, is that, forgive me for not understanding it, because we voted on money for that. So that is falling under in the same concept of maintenance? No.
No, that's a new trail segment. Well, I guess the portion from Ocean State Job Lot to the existing trail crossing is a new trail. The piece from the crossing to the airport crossing is, it was a divided trail, and now it's all going to be put on the eastern side of George Ryder Road. So whether that's considered maintenance or new construction, I mean, that, splitting straws here and here. So I don't. And that did start yesterday, the work on the tree cutting, the tree removal.
Is there an expectation of how long it's going to take on George Ryder?
We have to have the money spent and the work completed by June 30th of this year. The contractor schedule is dictated around middle of May. It should be finished.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. Rob?
Thank you. Next capital request is a $55,000 for a stump grinder. This one example is a Toro Dingo. It's a small enough piece of equipment. It looks pretty big, but it's actually just a walk-behind piece of equipment. It's pretty small, actually. And really, it enables us to, when we cut trees, we need to remove stumps. And this is small enough, it can get between the headstones and the cemetery and remove some of those stumps. It comes with a bucket attachment, the stump grinder attachment, an additional charge. That's where the $55,000 total comes from. And we'd certainly be able to use it for other things and buy other attachments like augers and things of that nature. It's really a pretty versatile piece of equipment. Previously, we've had to hire contractors to come in with stump grinders, and then there's only so much work that we can squeeze out of a day. But this would be at our disposal, and we'd be able to really beautify Chatham even more. Next is another annual request, $15,000, fence repair and vegetation removal at cemeteries. Our cemeteries are old and they require constant upkeep. Our Parks and Grounds staff do a great job maintaining what they can, but there's only so much time in the day, and sometimes we have to hire contractors to handle some of the more challenging issues. You see in that yellow box in those bushes, there's actually a headstone in there. But, unless you were a family member looking for it specifically, you probably never see it. And same thing, some of the concrete fence posts get broken over time, trees fall, and we do the best we can repairing it, but sometimes we need a little extra help.
Just for the record, I'm a big fan of Chatham's historic graveyards and their maintenance. Out of curiosity, and perhaps because I have an encroachment next to my mother's grave, what does one do? What does the town do? What does an individual do when there's something like that on the left as your next door neighbor and nobody's around to kind of take care of things for it?
Yeah, I wish I had a picture. This is South Chatham Cemetery, both of these pictures, and just, a a few hundred feet away, there was a very similar situation where our Parks and Grounds crew came in and they trimmed the lower branches and opened it up, and they really did a nice job. So they do a similar thing here, unless it was so overgrown where we really couldn't do it aesthetically, and we'd probably have to remove those altogether.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'd use the stump grinder to remove the stumps.
I'm a big fan of the stump grinder, too.
So again, $10,000 annual request. This is strictly for emergency repairs. This is just a Cockle Cove parking lot. Some of the wind storms we've had this fall undermine the pavement. This is just to help us buy material so we can respond in the case of emergencies. Does not fall under normal maintenance practices for a road. It's really just an emergency response category. Another request for $20,000 for annual road maintenance. This covers a number of different things from pothole patching, line striping, and crack sealing. Each year we hire outside consultant or outside contractor to come and do all of our line striping for us. We try to focus on about a quarter to a fifth of town to do it at once. They come in overnight. People don't even know we're there. They come back the next morning and the stripes are all done. So it's really just, our line striping has to be up to a certain standard. It has to comply with retroreflectivity standards out there, so it has that visibility at night. When your headlights shine on it, the glass beads really have to reflect at you. So we're held to a standard. So this is something that we can't ignore, and we address about it, like I said, a fourth to a fifth of town every year. Next request is for our tractor mower. Tractor mower mows roadsides, keeps the vegetation down, so the sight distance at intersections, and it gives a safe refuge for pedestrians and cyclists. This existing mower, it's been out of service for about 6 months now. We had an air conditioning leak that was repaired a couple of times. And it's just, we've found the air conditioning lines were completely rotted. So it's at the John Deere dealership trying to get repaired. Ideally, I'd like to bring this one back in service in addition to a new mower, at least until this one reached the full end of its useful life. If we put money in now to repair it, we might as well use it until the next major breakdown, and then we can auction it off. But in the meantime, it would be nice to have two to kind of get rid of some of that backlog we have in roadside vegetation, especially when it hasn't been working the past 6 months.
Do you know how many hours this unit has on it?
I don't offhand. I can get that for you if you like.
It's typically more indicative of useful life than, calendar years. So I'd be curious.
Okay.
Tracy?
Is this like some of the other vehicles where it's, several years before it actually would be materialized to
No.
be put in use? Or no, the order system for that is quicker?
Yeah, it's not like, say, a roll-off truck where they actually custom build that. Once they receive an order, then they start from scratch to build that. John Deere has these tractors. They just have to add the attachments to it to make one. So typically wouldn't be more than 6 months, I would say. Another capital request, $30,000 for catch basin installation and repairs. This is just a picture of one of the catch basins that we installed in the last couple of months. We're seeing increased rainfall events and flooding events. These leaching basins, they are subject to a lot of wear and tear from traffic, the weather, and siltation over time. Many times we just have to get in there and replenish the gravel around it so it can drain and clean the insides. But other times it's just too far gone and we have to replace it. We're replacing more of these than I think we had seen in the past. We're seeing more drainage problems than we'd seen in the past as well. It's I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't want to let that go by. Why Why is that? We're seeing more drainage problems. Is it the rain or?
It's the increased rainfall, climate change. We're just seeing heavier rainfalls. What used to be a 50-year storm maybe happened every 50 years. Now we're seeing it happen multiple times every year.
And this helps prevent flooding.
It helps leach the water into the soil faster.
Okay, thank you.
$100,000 annual request for sidewalk maintenance and construction. The picture here shows Kroll Road and a new crosswalk. This was part of a sewer construction project. However, the sidewalk and the crosswalk was not part of that contract. So for roughly $50,000, we were able to put new curbing and sidewalk and these ADA compliant detectable warning surfaces at both ends of the crosswalk to make it, compliant for ADA and people with mobility issues. Really like to see more of this done around town, and this $100,000 would help support that. Road resurfacing, capital request, $200,000. We already get Chapter 90 grants. This helps supplement that. When we have more money, combining an annual request with the Chapter 90 and the sewer work, we can get lower costs per ton. So we can get more paving done when we advertise bigger projects. So, or at least more paving in multiple locations. It's still a higher quantity gives us a lower cost. So we can see more of Chatham's roads being paved with additional money. Okay, that ends the capital request. We're around to the warrants. I'll try to wrap it up pretty briefly here. Just a quick overview of the transfer station ballot question. It's $2 million. Sewer engineering, $250,000. Sewer capital, which has several subparts, is $1,735,000. And the transfer station roll-off truck is $361,700. So we'll start with the transfer station. Asking for $2 million to complete phase one. So I'm sure a lot of you probably have some history of this already, but I'll just give you a very brief overview. Spring annual town meeting in '23 approved $4.82 million for the construction of phase one and phase two of the transfer station. You can see phase two in red is the building, and phase one is the larger recycling area. There was an additional $216,000 remaining for a total of $5,036,000 available for construction. Phase one was estimated, this is an engineer's estimate, at $2,720,000. Bids were opened over the winter and came in at $3,172,186.30. Phase two, the garage, was estimated at $2.1 million, and bids were opened over the winter and came in at $3,852,330. So total construction cost of $7.02 million, left a shortfall of just shy of $2 million. So we've always, town select board and the residents always insisted that the staff at the transfer station was the higher priority. So we really wanted to get that garage built first. So we've awarded that phase two to the lowest bidder. But that,
Excuse me, but describe to me, please, the garage, when we go to the dump and we empty our trash there, is the garage the building across from there?
so, is there a?
This is a lot of money, and that's why I'm concentrating.
Sure.
I think it's worth a pause to talk about how we estimated in the beginning, how we get to where we've gotten, and the amount of capital expense. This is in comparison with other things that we may have turned down or things that we'd like to do but can't. Is this worthy of setting it up as a top project, as we seem to be doing?
Sure, and I'm happy to explain that further. So when When this was conceived, I guess it was in 2019, detailed estimates were generated. The Phase 2, the building itself was a smaller building. But they went out, Weston and Sampson was the designer, and they went out and hired an independent company to come up with a more accurate cost estimate for construction. So that was 2019. They increased the size of the building. you know.
Excuse me, where is the building? Can you point that out to me?
Absolutely. This is the building here.
Now, where do we drop off our trash?
So you drive in, this is the gatehouse.
Yeah.
You drive past.
Yep.
It's a different configuration now, but you basically come down here, and this is where you dump your recycling
Right.
material.
The recyclables, but the garbage is where?
The garbage is up here in this building. It's only partially shown on this plan.
So I think for Joanne's benefit, that Phase 2 building's not there.
It's a
But
small.
but it's where all the drop-off is for metal and construction debris and,
Oh, okay.
Greg, you can see kind of a little dotted outline here. That's the existing building. And it's really just a garage
Yeah,
at this point.
yeah.
So this new building will be staff, break room, an office, restrooms, and a garage for vehicles to be stored overnight and worked on.
These don't exist right now, am I right?
They do not exist. We just are preparing to award the construction of this building.
And I know I'm prolonging this, but it's a lot of money. So what will happen to where we drop off the garbage right now?
Right now, nothing, because the bids came in so high, we don't have the funding to
Even with
award
all of
both.
this, you can't do anything about where we drop the garbage off.
No, we only have money for the building, and we have some of the money to support the recycling area, but we don't have enough money for both, so we had to pick and choose which would be the most beneficial. And there are OSHA violations for staff, so we figured that was the
Okay.
highest priority, to keep our staff safe.
Okay, all right, so you've described the new office building. What else we're spending money on now?
So that is funded right now. That's funded, will be awarded, and construction will start in the next, I'd say, month or two. It's this larger area that we are short $2 million to construct. And that's the recycling area.
Recycling.
This would take, this area over here is the, I'm drawing a blank on the swap shop. Yeah, the gift shop.
Okay,
And this area would be some of the difficult to manage waste.
like
I
what?
can't read it. Like
Excuse
some of
me,
it's
Mr.
like
Chairman.
appliances, things that, air conditioning units. Currently, that area is up here.
Yeah.
That would be relocated down here. What we're trying to achieve is when folks drive in, they really can handle the majority of their stuff in this area. These would be all the new compactors and dumpsters where residents would drop their recyclable materials. Around the outside of this would be the textiles and food scraps and things of that nature.
and Rob, for those who are used to throwing a garbage bag through the window into the tipping building, where would that now go, or in the future?
So that's part of our discussion that we need to have with the designers. Currently, they have a couple of municipal solid waste dumpsters here, or compactors. But we don't know whether, that's currently being used for commercial haulers. Should we continue to use that for just commercial, or should we continue to have residents dump there as well? That's some of the discussion we need to have with kind of a path going forward. Is the design we have and the extra $2 million going to really satisfy all the needs that Chatham has? Or do we have to go back and massage this a little bit to make sure it works right? And is $2 million, quite frankly, is that enough? It may have a little bit of cost escalation in there because it was $2 million 2 months ago or 3 months ago. There's going to be a small, at least an inflationary percentage of that.
Sounds like the kind of thing you want to get right the first time. Tracy? And then Kristen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if and forgive me if this is something that you guys have already talked about or discussed, but to alter, to make, to create a 3 phases, like change what of phase 1 can be done without the extra 2 million, and then a phase 3 that would be that remaining area that we could do with 2 million, and also find out what else more we would need to do.
Yeah, that's certainly an option, but, you know, right now we have between the 5 million we had available and, what was the amount? Excuse me, the $3 million $3.8 million we're spending for phase 2, that only leaves a little over, I apologize, it only leaves a little over, somebody do the math, 1.2 million roughly? Yeah, so I'm not sure how much we can get done for a little over $1 million. You know, maybe we can, I think it would be the upper part where the swap shop is. That would probably be less expensive. This other lower part with the compactors has a lot of concrete retaining walls, regrading. There's an old stump dump in this area. We have to remove all of that material because it's unsuitable, bring in fresh material. You know, there's costs associated with all of that. So, you know, there's definitely economy of scale. If we did it all at once, it would probably be less expensive than if we broke it out into separate contracts. But, you know, we're, you know, open at this point.
Kristen, please.
I don't know if this is the right time to interject this question, but given that the blue building isn't even kind of part of this design, I'm wondering whether, like Brewster, whether the select board has, I don't know who makes this decision, I assume it's the select board, whether we continue to take commercial haulers. You know, Brewster decided that was a great way to save some money, and I'm wondering in our redesign, whatever that's going to be, if that's a further expense that we're going to need to anticipate with the blue building, and whether we're going to get more haulers from elsewhere to come into Chatham to dump, because there are going to be fewer places. I don't know if we want to be the hub for commercial. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just wondering if that discussion has happened in recent times. Thanks.
And those are all very real concerns that we had and discussions we have internally. Yeah, great point, great questions.
Barbara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like we're redesigning the whole area down there when maybe that doesn't have to be done. I mean, if we did take that 1.203 that we have left over of the money that the voters have already authorized, can somebody tell us what we could do down there with it that would help towards making it a little bit better without, you know, redesigning the whole thing?
Yeah, I'll be meeting with the consultants again in the near future, and that's a conversation that we'll have.
Thanks.
Okay.
So really, it's just the last slide on the transfer station was just that the cost escalation and what are some of the reasons why we saw such large fluctuations in prices. And it impacts the Northeast more than any other part of the country, and I think it impacts Massachusetts more than majority of the Northeast. So there seems to be a lack of competition, and the Chapter 149 sub-bid categories, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical are all trades that we're seeing a lot of cost escalation in. So again, we are going back, you know, we're going to award phase 2, and we're going back to not the drawing board, but just to see if we can refine phase 1 a little bit more to either come in alignment with the $2 million that we're requesting, or to see if we can find some additional efficiencies to maybe reduce the footprint or, you know, the operational aspects of the transfer station. Next warrant article is $250,000 for sewer expansion engineering. So we just recently went out to award 3 sewer construction contracts, and there are 2 others that are nearing completion. So engineering costs for design are not SRF eligible. For construction oversight it is, but not for design. So as we prepare the the next phases of construction for the sewer expansion. This is just a request to keep that consultant online and busy and designing that next phase of construction for us.
So, Robbie may have just answered my question, but this is a new phase going forward that we haven't addressed yet?
This would be, so,
Or are we completing an existing phase?
no, it would be like Cedar Street would be our next area that we want to focus on.
Yep.
We've had some challenges with identifying locations for pump stations down there, so we really want to try to finalize that design, get it out to construction. That would kind of wrap up our Oyster Pond sewerage. So we are really protecting the nitrogen loading going into Oyster Pond. That's like the last link for us to try to at least isolate that waterway.
Okay, helpful, thank you. John, I think you had your hand up? No, good.
DPW warrant articles, sewer capital, these are the one that's broken down into 4 separate parts, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on the next couple of slides. So this is at the water pollution control facility. Trust me, Carrie, I still have trouble with that myself. So it's $265,000. So the tank on the right in the picture, it's shown all of the town's wastewater goes through this tank. All of the force mains around town get pumped right into that tank. It's a big galvanized steel tank. It has an auger that's not operating in the bottom as efficiently as it should. It has a series of chains, and all those components do is to kind of remove grit and break up grease that comes in through the sewer system. Right now, those are not operating as they should. So what happens, staff has to go up, climb up that ladder at least once a week with a high-pressure hose and kind of flush the system through to make sure that things aren't clogging up. There's a bunch of baffles in the bottom. Make sure those remain clean and this is operating as it should. You also see in that yellow circle, there are some corrosion holes up there that have been patched, but they really need to be, structurally welded and not, this is just a Band-Aid. We really need to get it fixed the right way. So we need somebody to come in, do a maintenance assessment. The tank is fine the way it is. We don't need to replace it. We just need to repair it and repair the components.
Where's the Lakeside facility?
It's at the treatment plant. It's in one of the buildings there.
Okay.
So it's just where all the force mains come in from the street, and it's kind of the first line of defense for treating sewage as it enters the plant.
Thank you. Andy?
I'm out of curiosity, where are we with our belt folder press?
That's being designed.
In design, oh my Lord. How long is it gonna take to deliver?
Well, it's got to, once it's designed, then it has to be manufactured. Yeah.
We better hope the other ones still work. Thanks.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry, Joanne.
is there ever a chance that the committee could visit these areas like this?
Absolutely, anytime.
Can we think about that? and
Sure.
See if there's,
We can schedule that.
because these are,
We want to wait until spring and it's a little more hospitable to be walking around outside.
whatever, well, we'll negotiate. But I think it's important to see it. And these are truly things that are hard to question as far as how we want to spend our money, sewer and water. So I think since we really need to get on with it and spend the money, I think we should see what the result is and know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, we welcome the committee anytime.
We can coordinate on that.
$175,000 original sewer system repairs. This is new. The original sewer system, typically downtown area, was constructed in the late 60s, early 70s. Those pipes are made of asbestos concrete. This was one of the leaks we had early summer, right on Main Street that we had to repair. We think it's really a good idea to start a fund to start addressing some of these failures, some of these areas, kind of the weak link, so to speak. We're going to see more and more of these type of occurrences happening if we don't start repairing and replacing some of the original sewer system that's been put in place and it has been in place for a number of years. It's great that we're expanding, but we also have to take care of what we own also. This is, the next warrant article is $300,000 to upgrade the core server and network infrastructure at the Water Pollution Control Facility. We worked with IT on this. It was something that they had identified that is, it's technology-based, so it's 5 years old. Some of the hardware and software is increasing in age, and really, I don't want to speak like I'm an expert on this subject because it's all computer stuff, but it's something that's sorely needed. And if you have any additional questions, I'll direct you to Craig Rowe, IT Director, because I'm sure he can explain it a lot more clearly than I can. And
So Mr. Chair, I just wanted to note the funding source for this is a transfer out of our wastewater capital stabilization fund. So it's not a new appropriation, but it's identifying funds, identifying a project from the funds that we already have through our Harwich Intermunicipal Management Agreement.
Okay, thank you. I think for clarity's sake, I may reach out to Craig, because I think if I'm not mistaken, didn't town meeting in the last couple of years, didn't we have an article for replacing the kind of electronic, digital, computerized switching brain? I forget what the acronym was for the system.
SCADA, the supervisory control, it's called
The SCADA system?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we had an article for that, so this is separate from the SCADA.
I think it's related. It's not the SCADA system, but all of our controls, all of our SCADA controls are at the Water Pollution
Right.
Control Facility.
Yep.
So whether it's water supply, pumping stations for sewer, the water tanks, all of that, all the central hub, the brains of the outfit are all at the Water Control Facility. So this would address some of that.
Okay, thank you. Andy, please.
I almost hesitate to bring it up, but when we talk about things like this, are we also looking into sort of best means of protecting the system from intrusion and from any nasty hackers?
Again, that would be a great question for IT. I know they are pretty diligent in protecting the system, but I don't want to speak out of my expertise.
Oh, here we come.
Yes, so cybersecurity for these systems and any systems addressing the town's utilities are on a separate system, so no one can have access into it or out of it. So there's a multi-layer authentication way of entering the system, and IT has it set up. So it's a cybersecurity system that has worked, and IT keeps reviewing new systems to see what other added protection we can put to the town's utilities.
Thank you.
John, please.
So if I'm reading the slide correctly, we should expect a 300,000 plus number every 5 years? Every 5 years, you gotta upgrade servers, renew licenses. So this is just being ongoing every 5 years.
Yeah, it may only been $150,000 5 years ago,
Right.
It's hard to say. But yeah, it would be an ongoing 5-year kind of revolving cycle.
Okay, roll-off truck.
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joanne.
Before we leave this, I'm glad to hear we're able to use the capital stabilization fund, the sewer stabilization fund for this. And for the town manager, when we take all of these separate articles, have we an idea yet of what, if they're all accepted, how that will change the 3.57 tax rate?
Yes, so once we go through the review process with the select board, we do present the total fiscal impact. So Carrie has a separate chart that she monitors every warrant article, including the town's operating budget.
So we suspect it may change if all of these are accepted?
Some, like this one, it won't impact.
No,
I'm sorry.
I understand
This
that.
one won't impact it, but yes, certainly the other items that rely on the tax levy to fund it, that aren't the annual items, like the child care voucher program, that's already calculated into the tax rate, so there's no impact for that.
Right.
You'll see that pretty soon. But there are some that we anticipate there will be an impact, and Carrie will note that when we make the presentation.
Okay, I'd be interested in knowing that. Thank you.
Okay, finally, thank you for bearing with me. So the last one, is transfer station roll-off truck. We have an existing Mack truck, 2008. Again, we talked about this a little earlier, how it's relied on to bring recycling materials to on and off Cape locations. In the summertime, as many as 9 to 12 trips per week. In the winter, 3 to 6 times per week. We have another roll-off truck. By comparison, this one has 325,000 miles on it, and it's, 16 years old? Because it breaks down frequently enough, the other truck we have is 3 years old and has 140,000 miles on it already. So we are almost overusing the new truck to make up for the deficiencies in the older truck. So we'd really like to replace the older truck so we can kind of go back and forth and not wear out the new truck as much as we have been.
Okay. Further questions for Rob or Carrie in this context? Andy, please.
Actually, I'm curious, does a vehicle like this show up in the state bid list?
So I was working with Carrie on some of these things where, what do we do with our old equipment? And that's something we're exploring. So there's a couple of companies out there that put out state bids, and we can put equipment out for auction, and that money comes back to the general fund.
But there's also a state bid list for vehicles that we want to purchase.
Yes, there's combis, and then there's also, I think Barnstable County has their own,
I'm not sure for vehicles. I think that may just be for,
maybe for
state
something
list.
else. But yeah, there is a state bid list that you can go to and get trucks, and
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, if there are no further questions, Rob, thank you very much. Super
Thank you.
dope. Barbara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rob, on the water write-up, getting back to water for a second, it said that out of 8,020 water accounts, 756 were irrigation only. Are we going to be charging a separate price for irrigation only? And I'm guessing that when we have mandatory water restrictions, that they are not supposed to be using irrigation. If they do, are there going to be penalties?
so currently irrigation users will require a separate meter, and they get charged a different rate for that usage.
Okay.
We basically want to promote conservation. So if somebody's using treated water that's suitable for drinking on their lawns, we want to make them, financially responsible for those decisions. And what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
If they do use water for irrigation purposes when there's a mandatory restriction in place, is there a penalty for that?
I don't know. Have we? So there's only been voluntary restrictions so far, I believe. So there hasn't been a mandatory restriction. But the summer before I got here, I think there was. I don't know if that was mandatory or voluntary.
I think we've had one mandatory at least. And what are the rules about swimming pool filling?
It's not
Not
allowed
allowed.
with town water.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to acknowledge Carrie's help on all this and also the support of the board in the past with, it's evidence throughout town, all the positive momentum we've been able to get with all of your support. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. I think both you and Carrie did a super job on the presentation. So well done, and we'll look forward to continuing the collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you. We still have Terry to go over projects administration.
Yep. Terry, ready to go?
Thank you. Terry Whalen again, Principal Projects and Operations Administrator. Let me just pull up my presentation here quickly. Oh, you already have the folder open, thank you.
And then Claire was over there.
Okay.
It's already open, but I can help you with that if you need to.
Why is that not opening?
Hold on one second, let me see.
There we go.
Oh, is it up?
Nope, nope, that's Rob still.
There you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
And now if you want me to wait for
No, let's get out of
Commissioner Andrus, okay. And then I did connect with Committee Member Papalardo with his solar question on the way out. So again, Rob touched on the kind of what is really going to be essentially reflect a realignment of the, within the budget for principal projects. And again, this just is really to take out the functionality with the changes in the reporting, primarily with the facilities directly reporting to the DPW director through the deputy director. So they are managing the actual, the day-to-day and annual operational lines primarily for facility services, repairs, the smaller repairs, and some of the ongoing expenses for the buildings, facilities division, and then the costs for, under principal projects, having our payroll, and then some of the other kind of minor, I'm calling them minor, but the, general operational things that you might have in a departmental budget for advertising, meetings, dues, fees, those types of things. So that's what's happening there, but also as the second bullet says here, it's still all carried under the broader DPW budget. So again, and the personnel increases reflect the collective bargaining and other requirements. And the attempt here was to keep all the operational line items level when we did the segregation of the, or the division into the two, into 190 and 192. So again, the 190 line item will be for the principal projects and operations budget, kind of the departmental budget, and then the 192's account lines will be for the budget facilities. So hopefully that's clear. And then just a quick overview of what our functional areas within the principal projects and operations. Oh, it didn't change. Okay. Down, okay. Yeah, I'm frozen here, so I think I'm gonna re-enter. Should I close out and come back in, Mark, or? Yeah, let me see what's going on here.
Get rid of everything extra you have in there too.
That should
Can you
be-
X out of it over here?
Yeah.
And let's go here and make sure that Rob's is closed. Can close all those. And get yours up there again.
We're taking this cohort and separating it out. I mean, it's still gonna be under DPW, but we're carving this group out and they're kind of ancillary or.
All right, so I'm gonna open this now.
Sorry. There was an administrative realignment done in 2019. And with that, we moved cemeteries into DPW. So it was building grounds and cemeteries for the grounds maintenance portion of it. And there's also what it's more appropriately called municipal buildings. We used to refer to it as facilities. That was all under projects. So what we're working to do is carve out Terry's role as well as our GIS, and there's a projects administrative assistant to have them focused on town projects and the airport. So it's a little convoluted, but we a couple of years ago, we combined them because we thought that was a more intuitive way to track the expenses and the direct line of supervision. But as we were looking back, Carrie and I, and on how the expenditures were, there was really a difference between the staff who was working on the projects per se versus facilities. So that Rob's team with our facilities foreman, Richard Corris, they direct the work. And this is sort of a legacy. Terry, in his role, is doing the scope of services, the larger procurement, taking something to town meeting, but in the end, the operation side of it is really in DPW. So we're still working to fine tune it. Get your mic, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Project development and administration versus direct oversight of facilities.
Yeah. Okay, is that clear to everybody? Not the oh crap part, but everything else? Okay, but to the committee, does that make sense that we're sort of taking Terry and his team out of the weeds and getting them more focused on project administration and less on facilities and operations, if I'm summarizing it roughly correctly?
Yeah, out of the day-to-day. So again, and I think that's a perfect segue to this slide, which I was frozen before, and I apologize for that. So again, so the primary support areas, and again, so we're not processing the the day-to-day or the day-to-day hour-to-hour supervision of facilities. But again, we're focusing on capital and special projects, and those might come via articles, grants, or assigned by the town manager. We do provide support, so with the 3 staff people we have for different committees, so liaison support, compliance and administrative support, operational support to facilities. So as the town managers mentioned, for larger items, and we'll get to the request for the facilities capital, so things that might trigger internal controls for requiring purchase orders, or things that require coordination that maybe if something breaks and we need to look at, well, is that in part of another plan, another project, for that kind of higher order, higher level coordination with facilities for use of that fund. And then again, the geographic information systems, again, the planner is under the principal projects and operations now. Okay. And then again, just some of the projects, so that have been funded from previous town meetings. So again, we're working on these projects, keeping these moving along for multiple projects at the library, certain CPA projects. We also are working with, which I'll talk to about the request for this year again as well, for the ADA transition plan implementation, and the 193 Stony Hill Road facility study that the selectmen requested be done. And again, just, higher order, what we do, keeping various meetings and things going in the relationships with facilities and facility planning here. We support the Airport Commission, the Energy and Climate Action Committee, and the Railroad Museum Working Group, and everything that goes into running a public meeting, everything from actual putting on the meeting to interfacing with the capital budget process or the budget planning, grant administration compliance, all those items, and open meeting law and public records requests. So those are kind of, again, things that we're able to get to more readily now without tasking facility or impact on facilities, in that some of those have regulatory timeframes and things that we have to respond to open meeting law items. So. And again, in the operation side, again, with the facilities planning, support, implementation, again, for some of the broader planning, the energy management planning projects. So we have a lot of different solar initiatives going on. We're working with Cape Light Compact quite a bit, Cape and Vineyard Electric Collaborative. Our group also We do provide a lot of support as well for some of our, I like to call these even landlord activities, so groups like Marconi, the Chamber, the private residences, so certain things are involved with either planning for those, making repairs, making sure we're getting rent, those types of things. So, and again, basically those kind of arrangements that are not waterfront related, nor telecommunication related too. I missed that when I put this together. And then we're also very involved with the work order system and the geographic information system, which again, both of those are resources for from the operations perspective. And we are working quite closely also with IT, DPW and principal projects for expanding the use of the work order system we had started with just directly for facilities. So basically someone would put in a request, the door's broken here, and we've integrated that, but now we're broadening it to all the divisions within DPW, so that we will be able to, as we use it more robustly, we'll be able to generate better reports. It's better for implementation out in the field, so when the crews go out, they know how many work orders they have open. Maybe they go into a building, they're down at town hall, and they can open it up and say, oh, we have, for efficiency, those types of things. And then hopefully, as we continue to move on also in this work order driven world, or the electronic one, we can also hang or connect invoices to that as well. So then we can do a little more data crunching for more easily on those types of things. And this new work order system also has an integration with the mapping system. So we'll be able to look at different queries on things that are happening in our facilities maintenance or the other divisions as well. So again, hopefully we'll be having some I would say more interesting reports, but more, different displays of data coming up, moving forward. And then also, we also in the division also do a lot of grants and agreements. So again, green communities. So we get grants. We also do annual reporting. Again, Cape Light Compact, Cape and Vineyard Electric Collaborative through most of our solar production initiatives, and then the FAA and MassDOT Aeronautics from the perspective of our supporting of the Airport Commission that have to do with capital projects, and also with we do a lot with compliance as well, and making sure that we're monitoring grant assurance compliance. Oh, sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button here. So, and this year, so we have the two, which I vaguely referenced earlier here. We have the ADA, the two requests that I've got in for the ADA transition plan implementation for $200,000, and the facilities capital for $200,000. And as you may recall, last year was the first year, I'll step back, back in 2021, the transition plan was completed. So this was a town-wide survey of compliance for accessibility and access across buildings, parks, facilities, and there was quite a robust list of items that were identified to be addressed. We calculated the total plan implementation to be over $1 million, and working with the former finance director came up with a strategy to come in with requests over a 5-year period to implement the projects and get those in order as we move forward. So that we're in the first year of implementation, and a lot of that has involved, so we've been partnering with a project manager, a designer, and also a sign vendor. So the categories of projects that we're working on kind of fall into 3 areas: those that require actual design work, because they might require a permit or some other kind of filing. low-hanging fruit types of things that are measurements or things that can be done in-house by facilities, and then also other projects that are, maybe might be part of future projects to see if we can integrate those into those types of things moving forward. So we're getting close to hitting some of the lower items. Started with sign replacement. So there's been some changes in the codes and different levels for access and egress that we're going to hit those. Where the consultant's also working on items that might have design work, maybe even something like moving a door or moving a toilet structure or something like that, where where we'll need to file. When I say design, it's really more plans for getting a permit. They might involve, so they're more permit level plans. So we're moving in that direction, and this year's request is just for year 2. And then I just noted on here too that the select board with their new goals and objectives this really supports. They had a similar goal in the previous go-around, but again, it's still high on their priority list. So this is consistent with that request as well. And I have, unfortunately, in the last bullet, so like all the things, we're always looking for offsets. We did try to get an offset so that we could actually, accelerate the program or reduce our capital request, and unfortunately, that was not funded. So, but we'll continue to monitor those, put in requests for those types of funding through the state, and that's Massachusetts Office of Disabilities. So they have typically they have an annual, at minimum of an annual request. So we'll continue to put in for those as well, any chance we get that we can accelerate the projects or offset the requests.
Was there another capital request?
And there's just one more quick one. So again, this probably falls into the questions that kept coming up before, as an annual request, but it is for the funding of the larger cost repair replacement items. So these might be things that come up in the course of a preventative maintenance inspection. And again, these are generally going to be costs greater than $5,000, or it might be identified in the field that something needs to be upgraded. The example before of the computer systems, those are the types of things we run into sometimes. While you're repairing some things, it makes sense to do some of those types of things. So that's mostly what this captures. It's above and beyond the regular typical maintenance, but these unexpected things or unexpected failures that we can have that resource available so that it doesn't impact operations.
And these were each $200,000?
Correct.
Sorry, these were each $200,000?
Correct.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Yeah, that's consistent. I think we raised it several years ago, but we've kept it at that level. I think it's probably about the 3rd or 4th year that we've kept it at 200, and that seems to be working.
Okay. Questions for Terry? Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look to you and your department, Terry, to keep this town running, our offices open and accessible to the citizens, no matter what, day to day and yet in times of storm. So I've noticed you're really doing a much better job on generators for all of our public buildings so that a storm doesn't inhibit us from getting the places we need to get and getting the information and secure places to go in case of a really bad storm. So I think you're doing a really good job of getting caught up on all of this. And you've got a generator program, I see.
Right, and that's really, more credit goes to the fire department on that, on us, decoupling some of those things. So we are getting those done, but we're working close coordination, and Department of Public Works as well with, keeping access. So it's all part of the team effort. But the generators with the, again, we keep the basics, but with the injection of the fire department into that process as well, we've made some great progress with efforts from the chief.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Anything else?
That's all I have, unless you have any other questions.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Carrier, are we done with DPW and its umbrella?
Yes.
broadly speaking?
Yep,
Okay.
that was all of
How we doing? Have you got any questions for us? Or Robert, Terry, or the town manager, Carrie, anybody? Can Tommy Doan hear me? Perhaps not. Tracy, did you have your hand up?
I had noticed at the bottom of one of the slides that capital requests involving the airport would be at a later date. Is that everything in terms of the airport financial picture is being discussed separately?
So the airport has a revolving fund, which doesn't get appropriated, but, except for the articles do. So we will be talking about the articles separate. Yeah, yep.
Okay, so the last thing I have on, at least on my agenda and our agenda, is the receipt of a 5-page memorandum from Elaine Gibbs, who asked that I circulate it to the committee, which I have done, and as Andy pointed out, and it is now hence a public document. I want to spend a little more time with it, and I think everybody in the committee should spend a little more time since it was only distributed by me last evening. Question is, what do we want to do with it kind of in the interim? Do we want to sort of take an opportunity to read it and sit on it? I'm out on Thursday and probably be remote for the next couple of weeks. Do we want to forward it to the town manager and the select board for the consideration while we also think about it? There's some interesting things here that seem to align with a lot of what we've been saying over the last few years. But any thoughts? Do we want to sort of sidebar it and for future conversation by the committee? What do people think? Barbara?
Well, I think it would be a good idea to go over the individual points that she's made and have the finance committee make our own comments in regard to them and then forward that to the select board.
Okay. Others, Joanne?
Yes, I agree with that. I think it was an excellent report and summary of what Chatham needs today and in the future, and I think there's much to be gained from it. And even though you don't agree with every point made, I think it's a valuable summary of what's going on and what we need to look forward to. And I agree with Barbara. This is our document. It was sent to the Finance Committee, and if we want to incorporate some of it in our report to the selectmen, I would think that would be a good idea as far as I'm concerned, rather than forwarding the paper to them.
Okay. Kristen?
I don't want to second guess Ms. Gibbs' wonderful research. I'm sure she's correct, but I see the document and it's makes some incredible points. I would feel more comfortable having town staff look at it and respond just to make sure that the fact finding is, or just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding. And again, no affront to Ms. Gibbs. I think it's a wonderful piece of work. I just would like to have some corroboration before we proceed.
And I think for the benefit of people who may be watching this meeting and perhaps the people who are attending the meeting, and not to be mysterious, but the memo really is a series of observations around what was referred to as the unknown unknowns, as I cribbed from Donald Rumsfeld a couple of years ago, and just kind of random expense categories that may pop up that we want to be mindful of. Drinking water, wastewater, elementary school, grinder pumps, housing, transfer station charges. So it's a thought piece really on those kind of things, and the question is then how do we want to handle it? So it seems, Tracy, well, let me start. Tracy, any thoughts on your end? Or Andy?
I agree with Barbara in that we can, speak about it together and sort of create some of our own notes and check on some of the numbers before, I think giving more to the other departments, do our own due diligence on it first.
Andy, any thoughts?
Yeah, this is such a wide-ranging piece that I would confess, I don't think I know as much about certain of these items as I should to be able to even think of a good question. I mean, mightn't it be more appropriate for the town manager to take a look at this and give us some feedback, particularly in some of the conclusions that are made, where perhaps some decisions are already in process, that suggest a different outcome.
So why don't I suggest the following? I again, distributed this, I don't know, last night, 5 o'clock, 6, 7 o'clock. I would certainly benefit from the opportunity to read it, spend more time thinking about it more thoroughly than I've had to date. Why don't we plan to noodle over it until next week, and then we can determine the course of action with respect to it. I guess I envision it going to the town manager and the select board at some time or another. Perhaps to Kristen's point, it goes to Jill and some of her team, if she so wishes. As an intermediate step, we can raise questions and verify facts or assertions, and then take the information garnered and take it back to the select board as part of our report. Perhaps as a means of processing it all. I see a lot of head nodding, any head shaking? We could do this non-verbally. No? Okay, so let's plan to do that. I'll talk to Joanne, since I'll be out on Thursday, I'll talk to Joanne, but maybe we can target having another conversation about it next Tuesday.
Sure.
If that suits everybody, and then we can take it from there. Okay. Agenda-wise, Carrie can correct me if I'm wrong, I think Thursday we've got the natural resources coming in.
Yes, natural resources, community development, and IT. Oh, and also economic development is part of, it's part of the community development. It's under that.
Yep, okay. That's right, community development, economic development, Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, yep. And that's
Okay,
another
I just
large
want to reflect, since I'm not going to be here and be available to join. I've had a lot of input from members of the community who feel as though the town of Chatham was at capacity this past summer. And I've had a lot of people make observations to me around the quantum of money that the town directs to the Chamber of Commerce. So I don't have a position on it yet, but I just want to reflect the fact that I've heard a lot of input that why are we continuing to fund the Chamber of Commerce when we can't find a parking spot downtown? So just something to perhaps add to the conversation when you hear from the Chamber on Thursday. Good. Anything further from members of the committee? General public? There being none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Ooh, tie. All right, Tommy?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Thanks, good.
John Papalardo had to exit. Joanne?
Interrupt.
Yes.
It's off the screen now.
Turn.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's off the screen now, but I believe, I don't know, somebody with an E, maybe that was Elaine, had her hand up?
Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody with an E? Are you still there?
Yes, it's Elaine Gibbs. I just wanted to say, if you have any questions about my data, I do have, information that I have gathered from the public records and from various departments. The only other thing that I would comment on that I would have added had I seen the presentation today is that when we saw the debt drop off, I think it's really important that money appropriated is shown in that, as well as a graph that would show if all of the items requested this year are approved by town meeting, what it is going to do. Because as we know, until the money's spent, it doesn't show up. And so the debt will be incurred over the next 3 to 5 years. And that the town meeting should know what the implications are in terms of the debt drop-off and how much we are going to be spending and what it's going to do to the tax levy. And I think it should be across the board where we have a 5-year projection in terms of revenues and spending. And the only other concern I have is that today there was no discussion about how we're going to meet the 2/3 for phase 1 for sewering by 2030. And if we're not, why not? And how much is it going to cost? Because we are way, way behind. And again, all those came from the town manager's report in terms of statistics. But if you would like copies about the universe in terms of the number of properties and all that, I have it. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your work.
That's helpful, thank you. I apologize for not recognizing that your hand was up. I was looking at a different screen. Joanne?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate this information and the input from one of our taxpayers, and thank you a lot, Ms. Gibbs, for your input.
And it's also to one of your points, Elaine, we did start with Alex last year, kind of working on an aggregated spending profile. If town meeting approved everything, that was the operating budget, the school budget, but the CPA articles, the standalone warrant articles to reflect the impact of all of those on the tax rate and debt drop-off. So I think that's something that we'll continue to try to work with Carrie on this year to reflect, so taxpayers can understand exactly what we're looking at on a going-forward basis.
Authorized but unissued debt is important.
Okay, so with that, does that spur any other comments or observations? If not, we have a motion and a second. We'll start again. Tommy Doan?
Yes.
This is in favor of dispersing. Barbara?
Yes.
John's departed. Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Chair's in favor. All right. Thank you, one and all. Appreciate it. Good to see you.